All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wandering Tavern. We had a bit of a break. I started a new job recently, so I've had to travel for training for that job. So that's why we didn't have shows last couple weeks. But we are back with, as by the title of the video, you can see, Lily Orchard's terrible, terrible fan fiction.
Yep. After about was it as a
I think
two
it's
months was
been
it?
a couple months. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like February since we last did it.
Yeah. So,
Also, be sure to check out last week's or the video we did last time, where we really got to explore Lily Orchard's psyche, really understand like what gets her to make the kind of character that she did.
mhm. So, and I believe you said you had a recap of the first two chapters since it's been a while. So let's hear that.
All right. So our story follows a woman named Eliana, who also goes by Darth Amarosa, but we'll just call her OC for now. She's a Sith, but she's a good Sith. She doesn't have any of the physical or psychological baggage that comes with being a dark side user. She hardly even hides the fact that she is one, and somehow word of her never reached Palpatine. She also cares about helping the less fortunate because, as you saw in our last video, Lily Orchard seems to purposefully misconstrue the Sith code, the Sith philosophy, and the nature of the dark side in order to make her, Mary Sue OC, look like the perfect embodiment of what a Sith should be. OC is from a Sith order that splintered off during the Old Republic era, and so far it appears that she's somehow the only remaining member, even though her order is at least 1,000 years old, and and this order managed to keep itself well hidden from Darth Bane's Sith order, which is also at least 1,000 years old. She even pilots a ship from the Old Republic era, and she's somehow able to buy parts for it, despite it being just as old as her order. Another thing about OC is that she's a lesbian and a womanizer. At the beginning of the story, she meets Rey on Jakku right before the events of The Force Awakens, and they feel an attraction toward each other. At first, OC just wanted to seduce Rey and give her the scissors, but after a short conversation, she decides to embrace abstinence and they depart. Also, while she and Rey talk, OC's protocol droid straight up name drops her Sith title right in front of Rey. Let's see here. OC is then shoehorned into TFA's story, much like Timon and Pumbaa in The Lion King 1.5. She finds the old man that Kylo Ren cut down at the beginning of the movie, and somehow the old man wasn't already dead by the time she arrived. Despite realizing that she's a Sith, he asks her anyway if she will help avenge him and his people. She agrees to help him because, once again, Lily misconstrues the philosophy of the Sith. She then proceeds to put him out of his misery by slicing off his head. In the next chapter, she fights Kylo Ren on Jakku, and in typical bad fanfiction fashion, the OC is better than the official character, and she beats Kylo's ass before he retreats. She later saves Poe from the TIE fighter crash, and later saves Finn when he's lost in the desert. Also, Finn thinks she looks like a stormtrooper without a helmet. Keep in mind, both Finn and OC are black. I shit you not, here in the Lilyverse, all First Order stormtroopers are black, presumably because they're slaves. In case you couldn't tell, Lily Orchard is a horrible, horrible, horrible fucking writer. She's a raging narcissist who thinks she can do Star Wars better than the people who made it such an iconic franchise, and yet she has terrible story ideas. Only 2 chapters in, and it's already inconsistent with the lore. Events occur in a contrived manner. The protagonist, so far, behaves in a typical Mary Sue OC fashion, whose backstory is extremely contrived if you know your Star Wars lore. The humor is cringe inducing, the writing itself comes off as a first draft, and the art looks like it was done by a teenager who's still learning how to draw. And so, from where we left off, OC willingly flies Finn to the outpost where he meets Rey and TFA, while Ray is just chilling, thinking about OC. And so, without further ado, let us continue.
Lilly Orchid, Chapter 3, Don't Involve a Pretty Lady. So, I think, I don't think it's been pointed out. Hold on. Let me double check, because so, mercenary, bounty hunting, deliveries, wet work. Okay. Swing your lightsaber like it's a club. Don't involve a pretty lady. So, the theme, I'm guessing, looking at these chapter titles, tells me that this will occur at some point. Like the fact it will be mentioned by a character at some point that this has occurred. Not or not to involve a pretty lady, something like that. So, the flight to the outpost was quick, as they didn't have far to travel. Had they wanted, Finn and Eliana could have made the rest of the way on foot from where she landed last. Of course, both of them have had more than enough of the desert, so they opted for the admittedly lazy option. What a weird way to begin your third chapter. Like, such a weird sentence. Like, oh, they're both lazy. They're just both lazy. They don't want to walk. Look, instead of Aliana and Finn flew to the outpost in, comfortable silence and wary with Finn watching her every move, very wary of her giving us sort of insight into who Finn is as a character, because he's just been introduced, all things considered. Because Finn has just been introduced, so we don't know who he is as a character yet. And you could have this opportunity to sort of make him like, who are you? Why are you doing this? Why are you being so nice to me? What do you want? Kind of thing. Or be completely trusting. Talk to her, try and get something out of her. Like, the character building happens in these moments where the plot isn't. Once Eliana landed the Fury on the edge of the outpost, she up to go check the medbay. Finn looked out the window of the cockpit to see the locals becoming visibly unnerved at the sight of the ship. What they came here to do, they had to do it quick before they caused a big ruckus. Once again, why would these people... So, hold on. I should have had this pulled up. So I should have had these pulled up.
Okay, so are they landing right outside the outpost, or are they landing at the outpost?
I think they're landing right outside the outpost.
Hmm.
Like, whereas previously Aliana had parked far enough away, claiming that her ship looked very similar to a First Order ship and would thus cause issues and would thus cause people to mistake her for the First Order.
Because I'm trying to think how this could possibly tie into the Force Awakens. Because if, as you remember, in the Force Awakens, when Finn finds the outpost, he lunges his face right into a pig's trough because he needed water.
Yes, exactly. So the best approximation the First Order has to a ground interceptor vessel is this. So hold on. So put up screen one there. All right. So this is a Fury class interceptor. This is what Aliana claims to be flying around in. This is the closest First Order ship that could conceivably hold all the things that are mentioned, i.e., um, a med bay, a refresher, things like that, and still be capable of spaceflight, and still be a relatively fast ship. This is one of their troop transports. Like I fail to see how people are mistaking this for anything the First Order has. The other closest thing they have is like a TIE interceptor, but that doesn't make any sense because a TIE interceptor is very clearly a snub fighter. Number one. Number two, it's clear it only holds one pilot, maybe a co-pilot. All right, so here's the deal, she said as she pulled her cloak back on and covertly hooked her lightsaber to her belt. You help me find my friend and the droid, and I'll take you off world, provided nothing else gets in the way. Deal? What? She extended her hand towards him expectantly. Finn looked at it briefly, and briefly pondered his situation. This seems just a little too good to be true for him, like he was walking right into some trap. To what end this trap wound up, he had no idea. What? However, as he considered just cutting his losses and seeing if he could find another ship on Jakku, it occurred to him that if Ileana here wanted him dead, or to drill him for information, she could have done that plenty of times over by now. He reached out and accepted her hand. Deal. I think this is supposed to be spoken, but without quotation marks, it's hard to tell. Ileana shook his hand, taking notice of the fear that hadn't stopped rolling off him through the Force. Something had scared Finn to his core, scared him so badly she could tell all he wanted to do was run. She couldn't help but feel a twinge of compassion for him. She knew that it was like she knew what it was like to be terrified and on the run, to have nobody to turn to. Ooh, he was tight-lipped about his situation, but whatever he was going through was something he was going to be dealing with for a long time. How do you know? Hello, Legacy. Okay, Aliana, how do you know any of this? Like, understanding that he's radiating fear through the Force is one thing, but 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 like assuming that whatever he's going through he's something he'll be dealing with for a long time is quite a stretch. I guess we can add psychic powers to Aliana's ever-growing list of Force abilities that nobody's really heard of. She let go and lowered Fury's ramp, looking back to 2V, as she stepped off the Fury. 2V, keep the medbay sealed and don't get stuck in the floor vent again. What?
How does he get stuck in a floor vent? Like how? Like how wide? How wide is the covering for his foot to get caught in it?
And why wouldn't the vents be above? You know,
I don't know. Maybe Lily's getting it mixed up with the Millennium Falcon's interior.
I guess, but the Millennium Falcon's interior had a bunch of pitfalls in it because Han Solo was a smuggler. Like his ship was designed to have little hidey holes in it, so having a droid get stuck in one makes sense. This is supposedly like just a transport ship. Like why would the vents not be up high where they can blow down? Whatever. Of course, Master Benico. Oh, 2V said happily as he continued sweeping. Janitor droid? Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it has. I've heard from people who are around me that Kenobi is supposedly really good. I sit here and think, y'all watched and were taken aback, and were taken back to Obi-Wan Kenobi, the character from, you know, you were thinking of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the character from Clone Wars, or like the movies. That's not his. It's not his story. He's a bit player. Just accept, like, I think most people will watch it once and then not pick it up, not watch it again. And when someone finally points out that it's a crappy series, they'll rewatch it and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is garbage."
Yeah, I heard that apparently in the first episode they kill the Grand Inquisitor, even though he's supposed to be alive for Rebels, where he actually dies.
Well, Palpatine has brought people back from the dead. At least he can. Look, if Palpatine can come back from the dead, then there's a safe assumption there that he could do it with someone else.
Okay, but would he though? Such a low ranking dark Jedi, not even a Sith.
I mean, apparently he had to, because Legacy says they killed him in the second episode.
Yeah, I know. Like, apparently, Disney's justification for purging the EU was because they wanted to have a clear, consistent continuity, but now they're fucking it up on their own.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I thought I had to burp. So, of course, Master Benico, 2V said happily, and he continued switching. Janitor droid? Family. He didn't ask if who the droid was to you. He asked the droid's purpose. Finn was left silent by her answer. Family? That sounds like an what the fuck? And suddenly we're in Finn's head. Hello, Finn. You're very jarring. Especially in this day and age, though the idea that someone would consider a droid to be family wasn't something he'd considered before, the First Order, droids were tools, and not especially well cared for tools. Why? Okay, I have to point this out. Quote, in the Star Wars universe, droids do a lot of like menial grunt work. And they're able to get into places like the reason they have protocol droids is so people don't have to dedicate their lives to uh this people can dedicate, if they so choose, their lives to the study of language. But think about it. You could maybe master, you as a human in your, let's say, 70, be nice and say 75 years of life. You as a human could maybe master 5 or 6 languages. Is to certain levels of of fluency. Meanwhile, C3PO over there has is programmed in over 6,000 forms of communication throughout the galaxy. Like 6,000. So it's just a matter of, oh, we can get them to do this. So it doesn't make sense for the First Order, which is a very which is by and large a military organization, to not have an entire like division specifically for like specifically for maintenance on these droids and their care and their upkeep, because that's how like their ships function. That's how small repairs are done. And like R2D2, who and his companions saved everyone, like in the Phantom Menace, R2D2 and the other like astromech droids. Well, they need to go out there because you can't send a human out there, or they would get flown off by the force of by the motion of the ship. That you couldn't send a human out there, or you had to send the droid. It doesn't make sense for them not to have them well cared for. Like any military organization and any military man will say like your equipment is just like maintaining your equipment is just as important as maintaining yourself. And the droids would be if the droids were truly looked at as tools by the First Order, they would be well maintained because they are pieces of equipment. Like even now, in the latter days of the Ukraine invasion, Russia was having problems with vehicles, just tires going out and air systems going out in certain heavy military vehicles. Well, one of the parts of the maintenance for those vehicles is just to move them around. Like moving them around, make sure those systems are still functional. So basically, uh, on military bases across the country, you have the squad of privates that is sent basically to, hey, your job is to move this entire motor pool from this side to the other side. Proof that Lilly Orchid probably didn't actually do any sort of research and is buying into the whole solo droids are slaves kind of thing. I'd never thought a droid could be family, he said, looking at her as they arrived at the outpost. Your family can be whoever you want it to be. He, 2V's a pain in the ass, but he's my pain in the ass.
Oh god, should we just play a laugh track every time there's a cringy joke?
Yeah, I just literal cringe. Literal cringe right there. Like, your family can be whoever you want it to be. He, like, yes, true, but like, this is such an odd way for Finn to like this entire segment is purely so Aliana can have this cringe as fuck line.
Yeah, I can't recall a Star Wars character ever even using the word ass. Usually when it comes to like swear words, the worst you get is them saying damn.
Mm-hmm. Finn stopped momentarily as Aliana's words sunk in. Just making a family like that? The idea was appealing. What the?
Yeah,
She
Okay,
said, I think at the beginning, is Finn to better reflect Finn's character.
okay. It's weird that he has that there's like the spacing that she has like the spacing like the
Yeah,
the 3 periods like if you have some kind at least have some kind of indicator that that's what he's thinking like quotation marks or italicize the whole thing.
yeah. Like it's just a weird pause in random spots. Taking a moment to adjust to the sunlight, Finn set to work searching for his friend, for this friend of Aliana's and the droid. His gaze wandered over several different varieties of non-human species, some of which he was seeing for the first time today. The First Order was extremely human-centric and didn't enjoy fraternizing with non-humans. Most Republic languages weren't taught, and what was taught was only enough to tell someone they were about to die. Even droid speak was something that occasionally eluded him. I don't have issues with that. Droid speak is actually a thing in Star Wars. Um, but why not like? But why though? Like, yes, I understand your enemies, but like, if your goal is to conquer these people, learning the language and how to communicate your desires effectively is something you would want to do because otherwise you have issues. You end up killing way more people than you actually need to. You end up wasting resources, time and resources to try and, you know, teach these people to try and like communicate with these people. And at the end of the day, you could just end up wasting your entire effort because they would have just signed on with you anyway. Taking a gamble, he walked up to one of the aliens, said, excuse me, have you seen the alien started yelling at him in a language he didn't understand, but was more convinced that it meant back off to some extent. And Finn took a cautious step back before Aliana stepped in between them, snarling at the language alien in their own language and making them recoil. She pointed a finger at them, her face contorted in anger. She said something Finn couldn't understand, but very clearly recognized through tone and posture as a threat. Okay. So Aliana just knows random alien language. Also, the alien. Can we get a description of the alien?
I
Like
guess I
it,
guess because we're looking at it from Finn's perspective, he doesn't know the species.
he doesn't know the species, but he could still give a description. Like it was tall, had a set of four eyes, two smaller eyes above the two larger eyes. He's and had fang, a maw full of very sharp predatory teeth. It gives you an idea of what you're looking at and why this thing might be aggressing or growling, supposedly, or yelling at him. um, when Aliana steps up to him, she snarls, which sort of implies that the snarl is part of the language. And so we're looking at possibly a predatory species that evolved. But like, do we just not get any sort of description? Describe your aliens. She turned away from them and returned her gaze to the outposts. Keep an eye out, but don't talk to anyone. People here are paranoid and desperate. You approach a scavenger too quickly, and they'll think you're trying to steal their things. If you have to ask someone something, do it from a distance. Don't talk up close, don't make sudden moves. Got it, Finn said, attempting to take a calming breath. I'm the best at not talking, you know? Like, I'm not talking right. He paused, realizing he was dangerously close to rambling. He turned around and walked over to examine a tent without another word. Wow. I get like writing dialogue is hard. Writing things that communicate what you want but don't sound awful is a talent most people do not have. This is bad. Eliana couldn't help but smirk. Hi, we're back with her. Okay, I guess that brief tour to Finn's head, it was just, uh, we shifted perspective because we had to, and Lily is just gonna let that go. She didn't need the Force to know he was nervous. She could also sense that the Force was strong in him, and briefly wondered if he was the presence she felt coming from the TIE fighter. If it was, he had a Resistance pilot with him, then they must have stolen it from the cruisers in orbit. Stolen it badly, since it was currently a twisted pile of mangled durasteel in the middle of the desert. As she turned her gaze elsewhere, she finally saw her. Ray was at Plutt's counter, staring at a pile of ration packs. Eliana smiled and began to approach when she saw her glance at the droid beside her, then take only a single pack before departing. Eliana was curious, but it thought little of it as she caught up with her.
Wait,
Ray!
what the fuck does she see in Ray? I
I don't know.
okay, like as I guess as somebody who's attracted to women, there's nothing appealing about Ray as a character. There really isn't. Her looks, her personality, there's just nothing there.
Like, Daisy Ridley herself isn't all, like, overly attractive either. She is average?
Yeah, I'd say average.
Like, she is by definition pretty, but it's the sort of like, yes, I know she's pretty, but she's not uh, extremely pretty. She's not just like strangely pretty. As in her facial symmetry is like slightly weird, or to where she's very interesting to look at, and she has an interesting facial structure, or that makes her very pretty. Or she's like, uh, I don't know, like Marilyn Monroe, I guess, where it's very clear she's a very pretty woman and her features are very soft, that sort of thing. And Daisy Ridley and Ray are sort of like the perfect middle ground between being unattractive and being attractive,
Yeah,
being
that's a
like
good description.
extraordinarily attractive.
Yeah, she's just average. Ray, she called out.
Sorry,
Mhm.
caught a yawn. Ray, over here. Ray's attention was pulled from her conversation with BB-8 and to the source of the familiar voice. Her eyes soon fell on Aliana, causing her to grin from ear to ear. It was the strange woman from the other day. By some miracle, she hadn't left yet.
Uh,
Aliana, she called back, walking.
why would she describe her as strange if she has like an attraction for her? I think mysterious would be a better description.
Yeah, mysterious would definitely be better word choice here. Walking briskly towards the other woman, BB-8 following suit. Hoot, it's good to see you again. I thought you'd be systems away by now. Something came up, she said, nodding to the droid. He'd following her. That,
Okay.
actually.
Okay, so this story is just not going to be keep consistent with The Force Awakens. It's just going to do its own thing.
Yes, at this point, we are in a Force Awakens AU, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
With two Mary Sues instead of one.
okay, so I guess The Lion King 1.5 wasn't really that good of a comparison after all. Because I mean, at least with that movie,
It,
the plot of the first movie still happened.
Yes, it's Timon and Pumbaa's story of the plot of The Lion King, which, is fine.
as long as you ignore how contrived it is.
Yeah. And that Timon's the story of Timon own himself, like his whole conflict in that movie because they had to give him one, is very poor. It's very poorly thought out.
Oh, yeah, I love how in that movie, like, so apparently I don't know like what the time frame was from when Timon and Pumbaa found Simba to Simba growing up and going back to the Pride Lands. But apparently during that span of time, Timon's mom and Uncle Max just spent the whole time just burrowing everywhere trying to find Timon, and then just by sheer chance they find him.
Yeah, like it's not a good movie. It's a fun movie, but it's not a
Yeah,
good movie.
yeah, pretty much. When it comes to those straight to video Disney sequels, it's one of the better ones.
All right, something came up that actually BB-8 gave Aliana a somewhat frightened series of beeps as he rolled behind Ray. Oh, don't worry, BB-8. She's not first order, I promise. You never heard of Lion King One and a Half Legacy? It was a Disney sequel they put out after Lion King 2.
It came out around the early 2000s,
Yeah,
so it might be before your time.
yeah. But after Lion King 2, a few years later, they released Lion King One and a Half, which was focused on
Yeah, it was about
Timon and Pumbaa.
yeah, and just it just shows that apparently they influenced a lot of events in the first movie.
Aliana nodded and gave a smile to BB-8 before turning her attention back to Ray. There was a raid on Tuanil the other night. All the villagers were slaughtered, and one of them was struck with a lightsaber. He was still alive when I found him, but not for long. He mentioned something about the First Order Resistance War. Okay,
Oh,
we.
that's a
All right.
mouthful of a title.
Yeah,
I think the second Galactic Civil War 2, or something like that.
I have more issues than this. This doesn't need to be here. Like, Aliana telling this whole thing to Ray is unnecessary. We, the audience, already know it. We can assume Aliana will at some point tell Ray, and Aliana can be like, "Hey, and I have someone that was actually looking for that droid. He's not First Order either. He's from the Resistance. Let's follow me. Let me take you to him, and I'll explain what happened." And then we can get to, Finn and that whole thing. Like, Ray looked back at Ileana, eyes wide with shock. Like, why couldn't this be Ray? Ray gasped. Like, the First Order was here? Ray said in shock as Aliana finished explaining what happened. Boom, done. Message communicated, and we don't get an unnecessary recap of the last two chapters. What for? What could they find on Jakku that's of any value to them? BB-8 chittered and beeped once more. Ray turned her gaze back downwards. Back downwards? Ugh. You? I honestly don't think it's safe to. BB-8 suddenly started beeping loudly. His dome turned somewhere behind Aliana. His body started to shake violently. Ray and Aliana both followed his gaze to see Finn glancing around tables suspiciously. Ray was confused as to why BB-8 was looking at some drifter until his beeps finally registered. Him, your master's jacket? BB-8 let out an affirmative beep and commenced rolling in the man's direction. Ray not far behind him. Eliana couldn't help but snicker as she followed after them, careful to make sure Ray didn't beat him too badly. Wow.
But knowing Lily Orchard's personality, I'm surprised she's okay with BB-8 referring to Poe as his master.
Yeah, yeah, there's that. But this whole interaction, like, Eliana is just gonna let Ray kick this man's ass for no reason. She just thinks it's funny.
Hmm.
There wasn't much she could do, but aside from break his nose with a plasteel staff, but Eliana could sense just how strong she actually was. It'd do Finn's no good to have a broken leg on the fly-off planet. Uh, uh, no, what? No, why? You've like you've already dumped your exposition here. Why can't you just be like, also, yeah, oh, that him, I pulled him out of a crashed TIE fighter. A TIE fighter crash that had crashed in the desert near my ship. Like, hey, why is she just gonna let Ray go over and kick this man's ass for no reason? I thought you were supposed to be a good person, Aliana.
So Ray's beating up Finn right now.
Yes. So, like, the whole reason Ray attacks Finn in their first scenes is because BB-8 doesn't know, because no one around there knows that Finn crashed at a TIE fighter.
It's like for a brief
But
second, Lily remembered that Sith are evil.
yeah, but
But then
like
again, I think it's actually just simply played for comedic value.
it is. But the reason Ray goes after him is because BB-8 sees the man wearing Poe's jacket, is like, oh, that guy must have killed him. That guy must know something. And Ray, goes along with that. There's no one there to correct that initial reaction. However, Aliana picked Finn up in the desert, merely walking like nearby to his ship crash. Pretty soon after his ship crashed, so why isn't she being like, yeah, no, I pulled him out of he crashed into the desert on a TIE fighter, or I don't think he's first order or anything. Finn watched in confusion as the girl and droid Aliana was talking to began running in his direction. He soon came to the rather frightening realization that they were running at him. He didn't much care for the staff she was carrying. Rather taken aback by the determined scowl on the girl's face, he began running away. He swerved past the locals in his path, barely clearing piles of pills. Apparently, there's pills of scrap and pottery scattered over the sand in his attempt to escape. He looked behind him to see if they were still there and saw nothing. Breathing a sigh of relief, he turned around too late to stop the butt of a staff hitting him dead in the face and sending him back first onto the sand. What a weird sequence of events. Also, why is Finn running away? Is Finn a coward? Is that what we're accurately portraying his character to be? He's a coward. He won't face conflict no matter what. I'd buy that. Like, these people are talking to him like, oh, this lady that picked me up in the desert and flew me here, or is talking to this other lady and the droid I'm looking for and droid, and now and now girl and droid are running at me. Uh oh, they actually mean me harm. What an odd what an odd sequence of events. Ah, damn it. He said, hitting the ground hard. His face was stinging and the wind had been momentarily knocked out of his lungs. Eliana winced as she caught up with them, with BB-8 ejecting a small arm and shocking Finn in the leg, much to the latter's displeasure. What's your hurry, thief? Ray demanded, holding her staff to Finn's neck. Thief? I'm not, ow. Ah, Finn cried out as the droid shocked him again. I'm not a thief. This droid says that jacket belongs to his master. Ray snapped back. BB-8 gave out a determined series of beep and primed his shock arm. Finn fell silent, his eyes turned toward the droid, clarity dawning on him. It belonged to Poe Dameron, right? That was his name? The droid beeped in a manner Finn could only assume was the affirmative. He was on board a first-order ship taken prisoner from from a village raid. I tried to help him escape, but our ship was shot down. Finn then turned to BB-8 with a guilty look on his face. I'm sorry, Poe didn't make it. The group fell silent save for the low, mournful whine BB-8 made. Aliana glanced at each of them, keeping her expression as neutral as possible. This was a chance, however slim a coincidence might be, that Dameron was the pilot currently sealed in her medbay. Not wanting to get anyone's hopes up before she could confirm it, she kept silent and watched BB-8 slowly roll away. Okay. So let's pause for a moment and just go through all of that. So Ray catches up with him and basically holds Finn down. Aliana, meanwhile, knowing that none of this is where none of this needs to happen, still lets this entire scene from the movie play out. Like this dialogue doesn't need to be here because Aliana should have been like, Ray, he's cool. He was in a TIE fighter crash. He might be with the Resistance. Like this whole sequence of events does not need to be here. So you're with the Resistance then? Ray blinked. Ray asked after a moment. Finn blinked, unprepared for that question, taking a brief moment it took him to stand back. Can't read today. Taking the brief moment it took for him to stand back up to think. No, that's just a weird sentence. Okay. He decided to go with that cover story. Yes, I'm with the Resistance. Yep, that's me, a Resistance fighter. This is what we look like. Some of us look different. What the fuck? Aliana nodded, but she could tell Finn was lying. For whatever
Yeah,
reason,
wasn't that what he says in the movie?
I don't know.
Uh,
I haven't seen The Force Awakens in so long.
Because I know he lies about being with the Resistance.
But she could tell Finn was lying for whatever reason. She would soon find out. Ray, however, seemed to light up at the notion. She turned away from the two and withdrew to her water canteen, taking a much-needed gulp. BB-8 says he's on a secret mission. He says he has to get back to your base. Apparently, he has a map that leads straight to Luke Skywalker, Finn explained. There was a sound of something breaking, and the two of them turned to see Aliana clutching her water canteen, which was now buckled with shards of steel cutting into her hand. Her face looked like she'd just seen a ghost. Skywalker, the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. The droid had a map that led straight to him. All right. Already her mind was swimming with thoughts of vengeance, of making Skywalker suffer for how he'd wronged her and her family.
Well,
Oh,
spoilers. God, don't get Lily. Don't give that shit away so soon.
How she wanted nothing more than to make Luke beg for mercy at her feet. Wow. Oh,
Also, so apparently, so Aliana just wait. Okay, wait. Was shards of steel cutting into her hand? Wait, did she crush it so hard it's now broken and there's shards in her hand?
I guess.
Let's see, which is now buckled with shards of steel cutting into her hand. Uh,
Like, if you crush something like steel, especially if it's a canteen, uh, depending on how you hit it, how it's crushed, it could conceivably develop that sort of thing, but it would be more likely
it-
like, yeah, yeah, you could do it if it's like one of those old like army canteens, like the round ones and stuff. Like you can crush those. If you crush those, they'll break apart. The way they'll break apart can cut into your hand.
okay,
But this honestly, I'm just like this is the first sort of indication that oh, hello, this is actually what a Sith would think like. Like, oh, yes, destroying him um, would make me happy because I want revenge. Finn wasn't sure what it was that got Aliana so worked up. Sorry. But what really caught his eye was the unmistakable alabaster armor of a stormtrooper he saw yards behind her. Fleer,
uh, is is Lily Orchid Canadian?
yes.
Okay, I was gonna say no American writes armor with a U. Okay, I was about to say trying to be pretentious, like how Clayton likes to call soccer football.
Fear clutched tightly to him as he started taking steps back. Oh, damn, they're already here, her Finn said grimly, prompting an alarmed ringing from BB-8. Come on, we gotta move, he said, swiftly grabbing Ray's hand and running in the opposite direction. What the? Hey, can I walk? I can walk, you know. Um, they didn't send ground troops to the outpost. They bombed it. Like straight up, just they bombed it for 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 the purposes of hey, if the droid's gone, it can't go anywhere, and that map will probably be safe inside of it. So you know, bomb it. Why waste resources on on a search and destroy mission when we can just bomb it from orbit and move on with our day? Aliana, who had spaced out completely after learning what BB-8 had, snapped out of her trance and turned to look behind her, her pupils shrinking at the sight of stormtroopers running toward them. The troopers weren't a problem, it was that what they implied. Apparently the Dark Jedi had failed to heed her warning, and now she'd just gotten Rey caught up in her mess. She turned back to see Finn dragging Rey off and opted not to follow, instead igniting her lightsaber, deflecting the stormtroopers' fire away from their dwindling silhouettes. Rey attempted to turn back and see if Aliana followed them. She didn't want her caught by the stormtroopers. Unfortunately, another platoon obscured her vision of the other woman and as they were running straight for them. Proof that Lily Orchard doesn't know how, you know, military structure works. An entire platoon is quite a few troops.
Yes, in
So,
typical Tumblrite fashion, she doesn't know much about the outside world.
so in at least for the United States, a platoon of troops is 18 to 50 soldiers. So what Lily Orchard is saying is there are 18 to 50 stormtroopers chasing after two people. 18 to 50. Just chasing them down, not like setting up firing lines or using their superior numbers advantage to fan out and surround them and direct them to a trap or herd them into another area. No, we're just chasing them in a straight line, firing upon them presumably. The two moved to dodge their blaster fire, ducking low and trying not to run in a straight line. Luckily, the shard stands and tents that littered the outpost made for excellent cover. They ducked into a tent. Ray finally had the chance to catch her breath as she realized the implications of blaster fire. They were shooting at both of us. They saw you with me, you're marked, explained as he dug through the crates looking for a blaster. Thanks for that. Hey, I'm not the one who chased you down with a stick, Finn retorted, digging through another crate. Does no one here carry a blaster? He asked in frustration, as none of the crates examined bore fruit. That's odd. For as for as like Wild West as very clearly both the movie and Lily Orchard's fan fiction seem to want us to believe this outpost is, the fact that random schmo wouldn't either have some form of blast, wouldn't be armed to some extent, or wouldn't be have some form of weapon within their dwelling is very odd. It's just a very odd thing that we run into. It's this weird disconnect. Where's Eliana? Ray asked, glancing out the tent flap. Wasn't she right behind us? BB-8 tilted his head out slightly, saying he detected no visual lock on Eliana. We have to find her. She has a ship that can get us out of here. Her, and also she might be in danger, Ray said incredulously. Finn froze momentarily, feeling ashamed of himself for immediately jumping to how Eliana would be useful to them over her safety. Why? You don't know this woman. Why do you care about her? She's useful to you. Like, that's it. Beginning, middle, end. And, like, she didn't follow you. Oh well, I don't have time to worry about her. I'm being shot at. Why did he do that? Lingering first order conditioning, probably. Yeah, that too. Sorry. What the, like, oh, so basic survival instinct is first order conditioning. Out in the village, Eliana was cutting down stormtroopers and shepherding the scavengers towards the shipyards where all of Plutt's transports were waiting when she heard the scream of TIE fighters overhead. She whirled around to see half a dozen fighters closing in quickly for a strafing run. Acting fast, she threw her hand out and flicked it to the side, watching as one of the fighters suddenly veered off course and collided with another. Okay. All right. Let's talk about this. This horrifying misuse of the Force. So, to move objects in space is actually a pretty difficult for Jedi and Sith. Like, you have to be on a certain level of power before you can do this sort of thing. Because to do it, you essentially have to fight the natural laws of physics. So one of the reasons, like the Star Killer pulling whole Star Destroyer out of orbit really isn't the feat that people think it is because the Star Destroyer was already coming out of orbit. All he did was push it a little bit. Like he just directed it. It was already coming down. Like it already had the momentum of down, of crashing into the planet. All Starkiller did was basically make sure that it didn't hit the factory and blow him and everyone else in there sky high. But this, and yes, in the Force Unleashed games, you can actually like just grab a fight. You can basically stop a TIE fighter, but that's video game logic, not anything canon. Like acting fast, she threw her hand out and flicked it to the side. Like this is no effort on her part. Right? Like even Yoda, who could do something like this, it was not an insignificant effort for him. Turning our eyes back to the fleeing scavengers, most of them were piling into transports and making rushed attempts to start them. One was destroyed by the fighters before it could even get its engines running. Seeing no time to waste, she lifted both of her hands, grabbed each ship with the force, and lifting all of them off the ground and pointing them towards the sky. Giving each in the engine a jolt of force lightning, she smiled as they ignited. The transports and firefighters and freighters all roared to life and took off at top speed out of Jakku's atmosphere. She just hoped someone could fly each of them. Wow. Talk about levels of Mary Sue. Well, literally lifting things that are at least several tons. And then at that same time, him jolting the engines with force lightning, which, if you like, I guess is just only as destructive as the writer needs it to be. Because remember, when Palpatine did fleet-destroying force lightning, it shut down some of the ships, but blew others right out of the sky. And then when Rey used force lightning, just unintentionally, she blew up an entire ship. All right. And then they just took off at top speed. Why wouldn't they just enter some sort of hover mode, or like someone would have to actually fly them to get them out of atmosphere? Otherwise they would just like float there. As Finn and Rey darted across the outpost in the direction of the emptying shipyard, Rey spotted Aliana. She yanked her hand out of Finn's grip and darted towards the other woman as fast as she could. Relief and adrenaline excuse me. Relief and adrenaline carrying her feet. "Oh, thank God you're safe," she said, stopping in front of her, grabbing her shoulder. "The scavengers are..." Er, Aliana stopped when she realized what Rey had just said. Her cheeks flushed slightly. Ew. How long had it been since anyone had expressed concern for her safety? Thanks for the concern. We don't have time. We need to get into your ship and get out of here. They'll glass this whole planet if we're still on it. Why? Aliana looked back at the fighters turning around, then back to the shipyard. Two ships remained, the Fury and an old Corellian freighter. She pointed to the freighter and patted Ray's shoulder. "You fly that out of here. I'll follow along in the Fury. Two ships stand a better chance of getting out alive than just one." What? So, why though? Like, first off, most of these ships have probably been gutted. Like, this is basically like the whole purpose of Jakku is to scavenge, right? So it makes some sense that there would be actual like flying freighters there, but those would have been get gone as soon as someone like from the word like from the first shots of blaster fire, like, oh well shit, let's get the fuck out of here. This meanwhile is basically Aliana turning to this Corellian freighter, which we know is the Millennium Falcon, which nobody's flown for several years by this point. And Aliana, with no knowledge of if this ship is running or not, says, take that piece of junk instead of my well-functioning, well-conditioned fighter, like instead of my transport, because two ships have a better shot than just one. That makes literally zero sense unless Aliana is psychic and can clearly see that the ship will work. Like 100% knows that that ship will fly. Makes no sense. A part of Rey wanted to protest, say that she didn't want Aliana to fly against First Order ships alone. Another part of her understood that it was the best chance of survival they had. No, the best chance of survival is to pile in Aliana's actually knowledge. You is to pile in the ship you know is functioning, fly to one side of the planet, fly to another side of the planet, hit it out of any sort of scanning range, out of underneath any sort of scanning threshold, and then leave the planet that way.
So
But
is Aliana the only one that's getting inside her own ship?
yes,
Okay, first. Okay.
like she is told, she sees her ship and an old freighter, and she says, well, I'm going to assume that that freighter is still in flyable condition, and y'all are going to take that, and I'm going to take my ship, because two ships have a better chance of escaping than one. But that doesn't make sense because Aliana should not know if that freighter is in working order or not.
Okay. Wouldn't the logic more be that if there's two ships, then at least one of us can make it out?
Yes, but this is the problem. Hmm, But this is the problem is that Aliana, by her own character admission, doesn't know ships very well. She can't repair them. She just head empty. Doesn't get it. She has no way of telling on sight if this other ship is functional. And I remember from the movie, the Millennium Falcon is like covered up in tarps. It looks like it's non-functional. So it doesn't make sense for Aliana to point that out, to point out this other ship, say, you take that one because two ships have a better chance of escaping, and I'll take mine. The logical, like the thing to do would be, oh, let's get in the functional let's get in the functional ship because we don't know if the other one has issues. Like it's like going to a car lot and seeing two cars that work that seem to be, one is brand new, the other one's like 20 years old. Well, you don't know if the 20-year-old one is going to work. It might not have any problems. But if you're like desperate and trying to drive something away, you're probably going to go with the 2022 model rather than the, 1991. Another part of her understood that this was the best chance of survival they had. She nodded and turned to run towards the other freighter. Finn and BB-8 following her. Be careful, she called out. Eliana smiled and nodded, excuse me, waving as she sprinted back towards the Fury. Now that Ray and Finn weren't in sight, she was free to use the Force without restraint. She focused hard to redirect as much fire as she could while boarding the Fury and igniting the engines. What? 2V, get in the co-pilot seat, she yelled as he tore up the ramp into the cockpit, sitting down in the pilot's chair. We're making an emergency launch. Oh dear, 2V cried out, waddling into the Fury's cockpit seats. I do wish these emergency launches weren't so common with you, Master. Yeah, well, I wish we weren't being shot at right now. We don't always get what we wish for. You could make a drinking game of, like, whenever there is a cringe line, you must take a shot.
We could do that.
I like my liver. I like my liver perfectly happy where it is now. When I've spent time healing it from college when it took one for the team. Aliana snapped as she gunned the engines and pulled the Fury up in a steep climb.
You're no fun. Maybe me and Cedar can do it then.
Meanwhile, Ray and Finn were running into the cockpit of their freighter, an old hunk of scrap that Ray had nothing but disdain for. She sat in the pilot seat and immediately set to work prepping an emergency launch. You sure you can fly this thing? This ship hasn't flown in years. Again, Ray pointing out this, like what I was saying earlier, like there's no guarantee this ship functions. Like it's a safer bet to go on the one that flies. Like you've seen it fly. There's a turret gun in the back. Get on it. We'll need the cover. Finn nodded and made for the turret. Okay, got it. I can do this. I can do this. Okay, we're just repeating the movie.
Yeah, so I guess what's going on is that Lilly needs for Ray to have the Millennium Falcon, but she can't come up with a logical way to make it happen. I imagine she probably knows that escaping in Aliana's ship makes more sense, but we can't have that because the plot demands that Ray still has the Millennium Falcon, like in the actual sequels.
Yes.
So she just must sacrifice logic and embrace contrivance and hope nobody complains.
Yes.
Or
like
throw
that has
or throw a fit if people complain.
Probably the latter, more likely. But like the oh god. Like what the fuck? Like it doesn't make sense. Oh, this ship hasn't flown in years, but we still chose it out of all the other ones. Like one of the reason they're forced to choose the Millennium Falcon is because there's a shot from the ties that attack the outpost blows up the ship they're going for. Like it would actually be, interesting if, say, Omarosa had found Poe and had told everybody, like, hey, he's on my ship. Hey, actually found a man unconscious in the desert a while ago. He might be who you're looking for. He might be this Poe Dameron you're looking for, but currently he's unconscious in the med bay. Okay, and then the TIE fighters attack. Fury gets blown up, which would definitely give which would be quite tragic for Omarosa. She's had this thing; it's a family heirloom. Like it's her home. Like and then allowing her to go on this journey with Rey and Finn together would
Uh,
actually, be relatively interesting.
uh,
Also give depth to Ileana's character, but
and here's
we're not
and
allowed that.
yeah, here's another idea. Maybe she straight up, maybe she just told them to get on the Millennium Falcon on purpose because that's the selfish side of her talking. And then maybe later on she realizes they survived, and now she starts to feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
Like there's other ideas he could have gone with. Just had to think about it for a little longer.
All right. The Falcon roared and whined as its engines came to life and the ship powered up. Pulling the controls, the old freighter shakily picked up from the ground, but tilted and drove its side into the sand. The Fury roared overhead, keeping the fighters at bay, as Ray struggled to pull the Falcon into the air. On board the Fury, Eliana sensed Ray's anxiety and looked down to see the Falcon floundering in the sand. Raising her hand to it, she gave it a tug, pulled it high enough for Ray to have some room to move, and quickly righted itself and took off at an impressive speed. So, like, I know Ray flying the Millennium Falcon in one of her first scenes is probably the moment you can be like, oh yeah, I can already tell where this is going. You're a Mary Sue, but still though, there we go. But like, so we're allowing. So I guess in order to correct that, Lily said, "Oh, Ray won't correct it, but my OC will." Like what? What a correction! Like instead of giving Ray some sort of interest in piloting or mentioning how she occasionally flies like speeders around and or like a T-16, something like that, like a non-space faring vehicle, but still a a flyable machine. We're just gonna say, oh, Aliana gave her the push she needed. It because she's just that kind of person. Ray's eyes widened slightly as she felt the freighter rise into the air unexpectedly. She wasn't quite sure what caused it, but given how she was able to correct her fumbling flight path, she was not about to complain. Finn, meanwhile, was considerably more panicked as he attempted to shoot down the TIE fighters tailing them. With how quickly they could maneuver, as Poe had previously pointed out last night, they were difficult to target with the turret, especially considering how unintuitive the turret actually was, with the gunner seat rotating and dipping as he aimed the gun. Still, he persisted in no small part to Ray all but screaming at him to shoot them down. What? Thanks in no small part, I guess. Aliana pulled behind the fighters pursuing them, catching them in the crossfire between the Falcon's turrets and Fury's main cannons. They attempted to break off from their pursuit, but one of them was clipped by the Falcon's barrage and was sent screeching into a dune. The second pulled behind the Fury and opened fire on its engines. 2V, get the rear shields online. Aliana growled as she gave up trying to read the ship's sensors and stuck to the force to figure out where the fighter had gone to. She quickly found it off her back end into the east. It was flying at an odd angle to the Fury's sensors. No wonder she couldn't find it. She was bad enough with the ship's systems to begin with. As a fighter playing hide and seek on her only exacerbated her uneven skill set. You could just simply say Aliana's not used to flying in combat. Like, why
Okay.
are we just being like, oh, Aliana's perfectly experienced in combat piloting, in catching your opponents in a crossfire, which doesn't make sense because she has just like if she's directly behind the Millennium Falcon, which I just realized she's now referring to this freighter as a Falcon, as the Millennium Falcon, but she doesn't. But no one has said it's the Millennium Falcon. How does she know? But anyway, uh, like if she's directly behind them, she's pulled up behind the fighters pursuing the Falcon and catching them in a crossfire with the Falcon's turrets. But if she's directly behind them, she has just as good a shot of of catching friendly fire here. Like why would you do that? Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you take that risk instead of, coming in at an angle, crossing your ally, forcing your opponent to either disengage with them to forcing your opponent to disengage with them to avoid dying. Like coming at an angle from higher up means that you end up in a situation where you basically catch them in a crossfire anyway, but it's not a crossfire that risks you hitting your ally. At once, master, 2V said loyally as he walked less than. Okay, again, proof that this. So we see continually that this was not proofread very well. There's little phrases and things that happen, and you can tell there's words missing. Like he walked less than quickly to the shield controls. Or like either this shouldn't be here or the sentence should be longer. One of the two. But it's an editing error. Like it is fixed in draft 2. Like I definitely see where you get the impression that it's this is first draft. Like an AO3 has a tag where it's like, this is unbaited. We die like men. Like basically it's saying, I wrote this, didn't proofread, didn't really edit it to any great extent. Usually it's in 1 to 2 chapter fix though. But here at 47 chapters, the grammar and sort of missed words are going to start distracting the reader for a very quickly. The fighter was hot on the Fury's tail. Despite its proximity, however, the pilot opted to fire in front of the ship's path rather than attempt to hit it dead on. It seemed the fighter chose to aim where Aliana would be rather than where she currently was. What? Okay, yes, you would want to do this, but why why does Aliana know what the pilot's doing? Like, I have so many questions. This whole sequence brings up so many questions. Aliana felt a prickling in the back of her head, immediately veered the Fury to the right, out of the path of cannon fire that had only just left the fighter when she turned. In the name of, she swore, pulling the ship back on course. Well, it's a good thing the First Order already knows I'm Sith, or that could have been a problem. What? What the fuck? Are you reading this too? Are you at the same point as me? Or did you just fall asleep, bruh? Like, what the fuck? Kylo Ren knows you're a Sith, but that doesn't necessarily mean this random schmo from the First Order knows you're a Sith. And and what relevance does you being a Sith have to this situation? It's irrelevant information. Why are we here? Were we put on this planet merely to suffer? On the Falcon, which we don't know is the Falcon, but it's the Falcon, Finn's eyebrows raised as he saw the Fury turn out of oncoming fire a fraction of a second before the fighter had even fired a shot. That was either insanely lucky or he shook his head and pushed the thought from his mind. This wasn't the time or the place, he thought as he opened fire on the now exposed fighter. Ray was occupied with trying to keep the ship out of the fighter's line of fire, while the ship was maneuverable. That I don't think that's spelled correctly, but I am not someone who spells like anything correctly. So the endless desert gave them few options in terms of cover. It was then she noticed a massive ruined Star Destroyer just out of the corner of her eye. Committing the thought to consideration for a hair of a second, she veered hard right and flew them amid to the scrapped hollow exhaust port of the vessel's stern. Ray, what are you doing? Finn called, suddenly seeing that their surroundings were a lot more compact. Trust me, we'll lose them here. I hope. She was jeering the controls to and fro. Okay, I'm gonna go. This is jerking to and fro, but frantically as she narrowly dodged the wreckage from inside the destroyer. Alas, the pilot tailing them proved just as nimble and didn't give them an inch of breathing room. Eliana hadn't followed them into the Star Destroyer and hovered overhead, trying frantically to find them. 2V, do you go to the nose of the ship? I'm going to see if I can get a read on them. She got out of the co-pilot's chair and into the captain's chair in the middle of the cockpit. She glanced back against it, holding her eyes focusing as she tried to sense three people inside the destroyer. It didn't take too long, but Ray was pulling every single switch and button she could find to get the ship through the wreckage unscathed. Eliana didn't dare touch the Falcon, lest she send it off course, so she resolved to redirect the fighter's cannon fire as best she could, ensuring it struck everything except her friends. Okay. So I guess we can add astral projection to the list of Eliana's growing force abilities, along with complete mastery of Sith Lightning, being one of the hardest Sith skills to master, and an OP like command of telekinetic forces. Soon enough, the ships were out of the destroyer, the fighter scraping against the durasteel of the crashed ship's hull on the way out. The gun's stuck, Ray heard Finn call up. What? It's stuck in forward position. I can't turn it around. Ray felt a pit grow in her stomach. They couldn't fire at the fighter behind them. She didn't know if she could shake them off. Quickly looking around, Eliana's ship wasn't in their line of sight, so they couldn't rely on her to shoot them down, if there were only a way to get the fighter in front of them. Ray looked up. Another idea half formed in her head before she was already deciding on it. As fast as the thrusters could go, she took the freighter up into the sky. The freighters stayed hot on their track. I guess. Okay, so this feels like it was written by two separate people. Like this whole sequence feels like two writers sort of writing in separate styles but edited and fused together.
I mean,
because
didn't Lily's partner also work on this, or
I think so.
just do the art?
Yes, I think so. Because like for a minute, for like the last bit, they referred to the Falcon as the Falcon, though nobody knows what. Like, here it is, right here. She didn't dare touch the Falcon, and then here it's referred to as a freighter again. Like, here it's back to a freighter. Unless we're saying that Amorosa knows what the Millennium Falcon is and looks like, identified it on site, and didn't start, immediately searching for Skywalker, Solo, anyone else to, I don't know, find them. I'm gonna take her, excuse me, and take her revenge on them, I guess. I don't know. Like, really? This feels like two people, one of whom understood that no character no character yet would know that the freighter Ray is flying as the Millennium Falcon, and then another one who just didn't read that, sort of, who just was like, "Oh, my character I'll refer to it as the Falcon because it's easier." And it's not like this couldn't be fixed. Really, it's not that hard because it's just a find and replace. Like, for every instant, like, you just go, when you're done typing out the chapter, or you type it as Falcon because but then you find and replace all that, every mention of that, of Falcon to freighter, or you cover it up and keep that twist in mind and keep that twist. Like, little things, it show how deeply broken this fic is from the outset. Preparing to jump in. As far as the thrusters could go, she took the freighter up into the sky. The fighter stayed hot on that track, preparing to jump into hyperspace after them. But Ray wasn't trying to get the ship off-world. Instead, she began reaching the ends of the atmosphere. She disengaged the thrusters and pitched the ship forward into a roll. As it plummeted to the ground, the ship began swiftly coming back down to the planet's surface, the speeding fighter now clear in front of them. "Now!" Ray shouted. Finn didn't hesitate. Taking aim, he shot down the momentarily confused fighter, screaming in excitement and relief as the fighter exploded into a cloud of smoke and shrapnel. Ray pulled the ship out of its death plunge and back into the atmosphere. Her excitement was replaced with a startling jolt when the Fury passed by overhead, moving in such a way as to indicate they should follow. uh, so I guess radios don't exist? We couldn't have, like, Omarosa pop up on the radio, hail them on the radio. Oh, a chirp from the dashboard alerted Ray to a communication incoming. Boop. Nope. You two follow. Good shot. You two follow me. That was pretty that was pretty sick. You two follow me. We're heading off this rock. Something like that. You know, a little bit more character interaction. Give give Omarosa a little bit more personality. Mm. They both pull down into space away from Jakku, flying at sublight speeds away from the planet's vicinity and far enough out so as not to be detectable. There was an audible clunk overhead as the Fury docked with the Falcon before the top ladder opened and Alien dropped inside. Okay, so we're back to the Falcon again. Consistency, please. Are you two okay? She asked, looking around for any sign of Ray and Finn. Ray popped up from underneath the ship's floors, a warm, sincere smile on her face. Better than the ship is, that's for sure. It's a miracle it didn't fall apart in that dogfight. Her head dipped down into the compartment which she was sitting in. Could one of you hand me the hydro spanner? Finn looked around and picked up something cylindrical. Oh, you mean this? She looked at the piece. No, the hydro spanner. Er, Finn continuously started picking up every spare piece he was that surround that was around him, only for Ray to continuously say no. Oh, look at where I'm pointing. That one. Aliana kicked the right tool into Finn's hand, which he then threw to Ray. Looking up at her and mouthing "Thank you," Aliana offered him a thumbs up. Okay. Like, the interactions she chooses are so weird. Like, instead of adding interaction to build character, she chooses scenes from the movie, inserts herself, and then proceeds to make that interaction as weird as possible. Like, instead of pulling the hydro spanner and handing it to Ray, he handing it to Ray, she just kicks it at him. Like, why? And what's with the thumbs up?
She's trying to show Finn that she's got his back, or I guess it's like her way of saying you're welcome,
Hmm,
because she's nice, despite being a Sith once again.
yeah. What's wrong with the ship? She asked, looking alarmed at how frantically Ray was working. There's an energy flux in the hyperdrive motivator causing a fuel backup, Ray explained as she continued trying to repair the decades-old engine. If I don't get it fixed, the entire ship will flood with poisonous gas. I need the bonding tape. Hurry! Exclaimed as Finn and Ileana set about looking through way too many rolls of tape for any ship to have. Ray, there's a lot of tape here. The yellow one. Ray yells from inside the compartment. Ileana grabbed it and threw it into the compartment where she heard a soft smack. Ow! That was my finger. Sorry. BB-8 simply wooed solemnly at the awkward situation the three humans were in. Thank you, BB-8. Like, Jesus. Hopefully we can get this ship before long. We gotta get out of here before the First Order's patrols find us. As Finn remarked as he watched Ray work. No, you two need to get out of here, Ray corrected. I have to get back to Jakku. What? Why does everyone want to go to Jakku? Uh, Ray, sweetheart. That option stopped being an option when the stormtroopers showed up. Thank you, Aliana smiled, feeling vindicated. At least one other person on the ship hated Jakku as much as she did. Finn scooched forward, looking down at the compartment. Ray, you could take the ship anywhere. Why would you want to go back to Jakku? Do you have family? You got a boyfriend? Girlfriend? And Ray popped her head up. None of your business, that's why. Wait, what was that last one? Aliana's eyes widened as she turned to look behind her. She could sense a presence out in space, closing in on them. It had been faint, and at first she thought it was the cruiser orbiting Jakku. It was different now, closer. We're in trouble. Finn and Ray both cocked their eyebrows in confusion before there was a roar outside. The two of them rushed to the cockpit to see a massive freighter opening up its hangar doors to encase the Falcon and the Fury. How did she do that? How did she know that would happen? I have no idea. The two of them were stunned at the situation. They'd just barely gotten free of the First Order, and already they were caught in another trap. They couldn't identify the freighter that was trapping them, and as such, they couldn't be clear if they were hostile or friendly. Okay. So Rey wanting to go back to Jakku is, in line with her Force Awakens character. But like, why? So, all right, business. Like again, no one knows what the Falcon is yet, and in the movie, I'm pretty sure they actually jump through, make a short hyperspace jump. They don't just fly space away from Jakku and then jump.
I
And
think
then
it. I don't know. I think they might actually.
I thought they jumped away, and then Rey and then Han Solo found them.
So,
Like I thought that
maybe.
was how that happened because the transponder just doesn't work on Jakku, like it's off or something.
Not sure. I thought the first time they jumped to hyperspace in the movie is when the ship is being eaten up by that tentacle monster.
Hmm. I have no idea. The two of them were stunned at the situation. They just barely gotten free of the First Order, and they okay. Hold on, I already read that. All right. Here's the deal. We're about to be boarded by any second now. I need you two to get it under the floor and don't come back up until I say so. Oh, you can't handle a boarding party all by yourself. I have a few tricks they won't be prepared for. I don't think a broken lightsaber is going to help you out of this one. You're impossible. Well, Aliana growled as she grabbed Ray by the upper arms, lifting her off her feet to drop her down into the floor, her space before turning to Finn. You, get in now. Okay. Why? Like, he, Aliana has only said, like, oh, my lightsaber's a bluff. My lightsaber's a bluff. To both Ray and Finn. Like, they both believe it to be true at this point. Why then does Aliana act as if Ray saying that's not going to get you out of this one, that's not going to help you, is her response, you're impossible. Well, instead of get down there and trust me, I know what I'm doing. Finn hurried down into the floor space, unwilling to give Aliana the excuse to use her supposedly broken lightsaber. As he hunkered down beside Ray, Aliana grabbed the sheet of metal and placed it back over the hole in the floor. Now stay here and don't make any noise, she said with finality before standing back up and walking down the corridor. The two of them were silent for a moment before Ray spoke up. She lifted me up like I weighed nothing, she said softly. Yeah, seem she doesn't seem like someone you want to get mad. Finn said with a nod, turning and glancing at Ray. Her face was flushed and she was staring at the floor. You okay? I think so, Ray said, turning her back to him and then putting a hand over her face. As she mouthed, oh my god, she'd never met anyone strong enough to just casually lift her like that. At least nobody who was human. She'd been so surprised by it that she didn't think to object to being shunted under the floor, or touched for that matter. Okay. Um, Daisy Ridley in real life, the real life Ray, probably about my height, which is 5'10", 5'11". My father is taller than me. He and has not significantly more mass, but a decent chunk more mass than I do. Ooh, he's older. He's got a little bit more meat on his bones than I do. I can still physically lift him. It takes effort, but I can. Like Ray, not like, and Ray is not some densely muscled paragon of physical fitness. She seems to be, relatively well nourished from the state she's in. And it's not like she spends every day training her body to be like dense with muscle. Well, she may have developed muscle as the nature of her work would require such things and develop such things, but I doubt she's very, very like she's oh, I'm like 185 pounds. People just can't lift me. Like, how is this something that Ray is about? Above, Eliana stepped out of the lounge into the corridor, waiting for the door to open. There was a series of clunks and rattles before the docking port slid open and an old man ran onto the ship with a Wookiee in tow, both carrying blasters. That's far enough, Eliana said, pulling her lightsaber off her belt. The old man narrowed his gaze at Eliana. The Wookiee let out a roar as he aimed his bowcaster at her. Hang on, Chewie, the man said, holding a hand up. He glanced at he placed his own blaster at his side before taking a single cautionary step forward, or towards Eliana. Not every day I see two ships with one pilot. I take it the that one ship up is yours. How'd you get your hands on this one? It was rusting in a desert in the middle of nowhere. Her lightsaber still gripped tightly in her hand, her thumb hovering over the activation switch. And that's all you need to know. Okay, so I have no issue with this interaction. I genuinely don't. Like, I'm trying to find something negative to say about it, just purely because I want to rip into this fanfic as much as I can. But genuinely, this is actually a really, really good peak of writing, like of good writing, like immediate, like Eliana stepping forward and being like, "Look, like I have a weapon that most people in the galaxy would recognize. He's Chewie, one of the characters, takes aim, is like, yeah, I'm gonna fight you. The other one is like, hold up, 2 and 2 do not make 6. Hicks, what's the deal? Something else is going on here. I can smell it. So he is so this other character, Han Solo. We know it's Han Solo, but he hasn't been named yet. So the just hey, clever. Like, maybe we can deal with this diplomatically. We don't have to fight. Eight. Well, then I'm sure you won't mind us taking this one. You can keep yours if you like. Doesn't look like would go for much on the market anyway. Chewie snorted in a way that could be interpreted as laughter. Eliana narrowed her eyes at the old man. He had quite a pompous attitude for someone staring down the emitter of a lightsaber. Okay, again, he's not trying to be pompous. He's trying to say, like, I want the ship. You've already got one. Can I have it? It and honestly, if she protested, I'm pretty sure he would offer to buy it off her. Like, why is oh, you arrogant dick. How dare you assume you could take my property? He seems you have a big enough ship. And don't test me, Wookiee. I don't need a lightsaber to take you out. Wow, just openly hostile for no reason. Any retort the old man was about to give if, when he heard a series of beeps, he was behind him. Again, this missing word shit. Like, when he heard turning around, he saw the head of BB-8 just before it turned back around the corner. Ah, great, he said with a grumble. Chewie, search the rest of the ship. Make sure there aren't any other passengers. Aliana panicked. She couldn't have this Wookiee searching through the ship. While she knew Wookiees could be friendly, she had no idea what temperament this one had been bred with. Wow.
Mm.
Wookiees that traveled with humans were often fiercely loyal to their companions and violently hostile to everything else. As she lifted her hand and gripped the muscles in their
Well, that's
legs,
because Chewie has a life debt. That's why he always tags around Solo.
very true. However, like, why though? But like, what temperament this one had been bred with, though? Like, implying that Wookiees, from the moment they're born, are either like one end of the extreme or the other. Like, they're either super nice or they are violent monsters who tear people's arms off. You two aren't searching anything, she said, flicking her hand and ripping their weapons out of their grips. BB-8, go lock down the ship. BB-8 extended a mechanical appendage and mimicked a salute before rolling down the corridor. The old man and the Wookiee both struggled against the hold, but to no avail. He turned his gaze back to Aliana. Well, you don't strike me as a Jedi, he said through gritted teeth. You with the First Order? No, Aliana narrowed her eyes. Now, unless you want to be pieces on the floor, I suggest you tell me who you are and why you're boarding my ship. Your ship? The old man asked in offense. Well, pardon me, honey, but I'll be damned if I let a Sith have the Falcon. Aliana cocked an eyebrow. Falcon? Yes, the Millennium Falcon. The ship that you've been sort of hinting that that you've been pointing at and saying, "This is the Falcon. It's not a freighter, it's the Falcon." And for like half this page. Your name now. Han Solo, he said with an air of softness. This is Chewbacca. Perhaps you heard of us? Helped save the galaxy from your predecessors and all that. What a weird thing for Han Solo to say. Chewie huffed in agreement. Aliana's eyes widened. She had heard of them, in fact.
Actually, would Han even know what a Sith even is? I mean, he barely knew
Possibly,
he
it's
barely
like
knew what the
Luke might
Jedi
have
were.
told, Luke might have told him in like in the past 30 years, but who knows? Aliana's eyes widened. She had heard of them, in fact. Her mother had taught her about recent galactic history. of her mother's stories was the reason she became a historian in the first place. Han Solo was a war hero of the New Republic and an ally to the Jedi that made her wary, but objectively she knew he wasn't an immediately threat. An immediately threat. She realized the two of them she released the two of them from her grip and turned on her heel to open the door to the lounge. Rey, Finn, come out. They aren't hostile.
Mm.
I was reading ahead. It only gets worse. Han and Chewie were left slightly stunned, rather surprised at hearing their names. Their names didn't prompt the Sith to kill them, but instead regard them as non-hostile. Confusion only grew as they walked down the corridor to see two people around the same age climb up out of the floor. What the Yeah, understandable. Hold on. The child wants in.
See, Han and Chewie were left slightly stunned. Hearing their names and prompt the Sith to kill. I think so. Yeah, no kidding.
Sorry about that.
Mm.
Like, yeah, it sort of doesn't make sense for a Sith to regard these two war heroes as non-hostile instead of looking at them as being like, well, their public executions might net me some something. But I guess, oh, that's fine, whatever. This goes back to Lilly Orchid not really understanding like what the hell the Sith like the what the Sith are from a philosophical point of view.
More like Lily just wants to misconstrue the Sith to make it what she thinks they should be.
Also, yes. Finn eyed the two with caution, his gaze all but fixed on the Wookiee, and they are apparently this is Han Solo and Chewbacca, and believe it or not, we're on the Millennium Falcon. And what are you serious? Rey asked with a wide grin, darting between Han and Chewie with a look of wonder and excitement. Yeah, she's serious, Han said, stepping past them and into the cockpit. This is my ship. Now, who'd you steal it from? Unkar Plutt on Jakku. Jakku? Unbelievable. Han grumbled before turning and walking back towards the cockpit. He was already in the cockpit. Why is he walking towards the cockpit again? Ow. Ow. Don't claw me. What time is it? It's only 4. Quit begging for food. Well, you can tell Plutt that Han Solo just took it back. I'm sorry, but what's going on? That's Han Solo, the rebellion leader in the last war. Thank you. You know what? And this is the Millennium Falcon. This ship is legendary. It made the castle run in less than 12 parsecs. In less than 14 parsecs. 12, Han yelled from down the corridor. Okay. Thank you, Lilly Orchid. You fixed this massive mistake in the Force Awakens.
Because in The Force Awakens, she remembers him as a smuggler.
Yeah. instead of a rebellion leader.
Yeah.
Aliana followed him into the
Mhm.
cockpit, feeling nervous. She could take Solo if it came to blows, but he knew she was a Sith, and she didn't want him telling Rey. I'm sorry about all that before. When people board a ship, you tend to be on edge, and I didn't want anything dangerous to get to my friends. Han turned to face Aliana and gave her a shrug. No harm done. Honestly, I'm rather impressed that you didn't just kill us from the word go. Never seen that much Never seen that much self-restraint from a Sith. He was cut off by a finger placed on his lips. Wow, rude?
Uh,
Like,
isn't Vader the only Sith he's ever met?
yes. I don't think he actually ever met the Emperor. Vader was the only like bad guy he really had genuine interaction with. But still, like why would he know what a Sith is? Like unless Luke told him or they encountered Sith in the prevailing years behind after, I guess could could be a thing, possibly. I don't know. I don't get it. Like why does Han Solo suddenly know all about the Force? He didn't seem to care about it very much when the movies were about. Like in the original trilogy, he like doesn't care. Or in the new trilogy, he's there for one movie. He tells them the Force is real, but to what level? Like the Force and everything and the Jedi, they were real. Well, but that's about it. He doesn't elaborate it any further. And he doesn't seem to have much knowledge on it, or at least not that the movie tells us. That has to remain a secret. Excuse me. That has to remain a secret right now, she stressed. He looked down the corridor where Finn and Ray were. Wait, your friends don't know? No, they don't. Or at least I hope they don't. I haven't run away yet, so I'm pretty sure they don't. And I don't want them to find out either. You're not planning on hurting them, are you? No. I need to keep a low profile. The more people know, the more they're in danger.
Then oh, okay, I know this is just a cover because she doesn't want Ray to know, but God, never mind.
Like, and I hearken back to the first chapter, Eliana, when you were basically just
Yeah, just
like,
kind of
"Oh
blabbing to
yeah,
everybody. I was this.
yeah, screw you. I am a Sith. Screw you if you want like come get some if you want to know. If you want to
Yeah,
fuck around and find out."
yeah.
Like
So yeah, I guess she has to be just she's lying to I guess Han and herself because she doesn't want Ray to know.
I suppose.
That's the only logical thing I can think of, since everybody seems to know she's a Sith except for Ray.
Oh God. All right. I just saw. All right. No. Han was quiet as he thought for a moment, and I'll keep your secret in exchange for this ship back. All right, done. So which is it? Han asked curiously as he sat down in the cockpit seat. What? I don't need the Force to be able to tell that you care about one of them a lot more than the other. So which one is it? Eliana was surprised that she'd been read that easily by a complete stranger. She'd been easy for her mother to read when she was younger, and she knew a mess around she could be a mess around women. But this old man, who was probably older than the Galactic Empire, could figure her out was alarming. If he could read her, who else could? The girl, she said, leaning against the doorway. Does she know? He asked. Just told you she doesn't. I don't mean you being a Sith. No. All right, that's two secrets I'm keeping. Now you owe me. Now you owe me, he said with a smirk. You bantha's ass, she said with a glare. Ooh, God. All right. So, all right, that's two secrets I'm keeping. Now you owe me, he said, turning his head with a smirk. Smirk? Aliana glared at him as she said, you Bantha's ass. Instead of she said, he said. She turned to leave when something flashed through her mind as she stopped. She could sense a lot of people. A lot of people who were mad, greedy, and a first order bounty. Okay, so I guess Aliana is somehow connected to the fourth wall, and the fourth wall keeps leaking plot details to her.
Yeah, so how well do you sense somebody with a force?
It depends entirely on skill level and talent. Like in canon wise, like there are Jedi that would be able to sense life on like from like a mustard seed. They could sense and manipulate that life. But for others, it's actually a challenge because their skill sets and their talents lie elsewhere. Most people, like your average run of the mill force user, is going to be able to sense someone, but that sent like to the level and the radius by and the sensory radius by which they could do that would shift dependent on the individual. Like I'm sure Yoda was powerful enough to pick out individuals across Coruscant if he really put his mind to it. But someone um like Kenobi, who would be, more combat oriented, or Anakin, they wouldn't be able to do that. Like the fact that she can sense this many like you can just be like, "Oh, there's a first order bounty and they're greedy and angry." Like that's almost instantaneous precognition, which is not something the Jedi really have. They have to focus on the future because the future is continually and forever in flux. Oh no, she thought. Oh no, she thought. Mercenaries. Solo, someone's boarding the ship you came here on, and they're not happy. Han looked at her in confusion, which was soon replaced with irritance. Ah, hell, not them. All right, stay here. I'll handle this. He said, getting up from his seat. I don't think that's a good idea. And why not? I have a feeling. Ooh, 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 guys. Aliana is having a feeling. Of course means she's force sensitive in the movies. He's according to, The Rise of Skywalker, or the last truly canon movie. He, if you have feelings, you are now you're force sensitive. Like she turned she said, turning and sprinting down into the Falcon's lounge. Ray and Finn were sat there trying to work out what was going on when she burst into the room. We have to leave now. The two of them looked up confused. What? There are people boarding Solo's freighter. They have a first order bounty. He explained, opening the top hatch to the Fury. We have to get out of here now. Look, Missy, that freighter's packed to the brim with valuable cargo. We're not going to abandon that ship for this one just because. Suddenly the group heard a loud explosion followed by the entire ship shaking. What was that? What was that? Ray asked, panic clear on her face. That was probably the sound of the hyperdrive being blown up. Aliana looked at Han in mock surprise. Oh, hey, how about that? All right, four of you get out of here. I'll cover you in the Fury. She said as she started to ascend the ladder, her to her ship. Wait, I'll come with you. Ray, I think it's best if you stay here. We shouldn't split up more than we have to.
Hmm.
Then why are
How
you
long? How
leaving?
long is this chapter?
A little bit longer. I think
Okay.
we're gonna get through a little bit more. All right. We shouldn't split up more than we have to. I don't feel right leaving you alone in all this. The Falcon's fit to fly. It doesn't need to repair it anymore, so I'm coming with you. The Wookiee is eating your staff, Eliana said, pointing behind her. You honestly expect me to fall for that? Ray asked, not taking her eyes off Eliana. Eliana groaned. Worth a try. Come on. All right,
Okay.
come on.
Okay, good. I legitimately thought it was gonna cut away to Chewie actually chewing on the staff.
Ditto. This is that bad that I thought they would just Ray would turn around, see
Humor.
Chewie eating her staff for no reason other than we just need him to be biting it now.
Yeah, didn't earlier Eliana picked her up and started blushing like an anime girl.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like we're in that level of cartoonish humor. So I will actually give some props to Lily for not doing that.
Yes. If the First Order detects us splitting up, they'll have to decide who to follow. We'll meet up somewhere once we're in the clear, all right? Finn nodded. Got it. I'll keep the droid safe. You two keep each other safe. Or else. Ray smiled warmly at Finn as she ascended the chute and stepped into the Fury's cargo hold. Aliana gave Finn an equally warm smile and nodded. Thanks, Finn. Mm, And she followed after Ray, turning to look at Han. Where do you want to meet up? You know Mas Kanata's place? Takanda? Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, I'll be there. Pulling herself up to the chute and sealing it blah, and sealing it shut. Han sighed as he stepped into the Falcon's cockpit. Come on, kid, let's make you useful. On board the Fury, Aliana and Ray were detaching the ship and preparing it for hyperspace when V2 tapped her on the shoulder. Miss Benico, I hate to trouble you, but the patient in medical bay has regained consciousness. Is he lucid? Unfortunately, he's groaning and fidgeting. He couldn't respond to questions on who he was. Put him under and seal off the med bay. There's a resistance safe house on the way to Conda. We'll hand him off there. We're actually going to the resistance? It's just to drop off the patient. We should be in and out of there on the way to Conda. The safe houses are for mercenaries, black market suppliers, and friendly ships. I'm all three, so I have the coordinates. So I have the coordinates for most of them. There aren't any major personnel there, or in case they're discovered, and they won't give me coordinates to the base. We need we need BB-8 to get there. Why are we going to Conda? Han's suggestion. There's a woman who runs a pirate's haven and who can offer shelter until we can get a message across the galaxy. Aliana said before looking up to see the hangar's doors were still closed and the bounty hunters were already inside. Ah, hell. 1 second. So I notice we're skipping over the tentacle monster scene, which I can appreciate. Like, we're skipping over the whole Han is an incompetent smuggler scene. We're skipping over the tentacle monster scene. We're moving on, and I appreciate that. Also, why would the Resistance compromise their safe houses like this? It doesn't make sense. Like, there's a reason safe houses are safe houses, and that's because no one knows they're safe houses. Like, they're specifically chosen and no one is told about them because that because they need to be kept secret. Like even people who even if you did have a safe house, you wouldn't tell someone else about that safe house unless you trusted them completely not to burn your safe house. So why would the resistance burn their safe houses like this? Like she aimed the Fury's guns at the hangar door. In a few shots, blasted it open, clearing their exit and jettisoning a few of the mercenaries into space. Good to know Han was too cheap to invest in Ray shields. Ray, Ray, get us out of here. Good lord, excuse me. Ray, get us out of here. I'll chart a course. Ray got into the pilot seat and took the controls, while Aliana turned to the navigation chart, entering the coordinates for the safe house. Os and Takonda. Below them, the Falcon was already speeding out of the hangar and jumped to light speed, the Fury following not long after. Aliana breathed a sigh of relief as she flopped down in the captain's chair. Well, that was a close one. Ray turned around from the controls to give Aliana a false mirth. Is every day this exciting for you? Not always, she said with an equally warm smile. Usually days this exciting don't involve a pretty lady. What, you let the droid do all the work for you? There was a moment of dead silence as both women soon realized what they had just said to each other and turned away to conceal the blush on their faces. How long did the safe
Uh,
house? 6 hours and another 3 days to Conda. I see, he, Ray said, still somewhat flustered by her own behavior. Well, if that's the case, do you have any more of that stuff you made last time I was here? Yeah, I should. Aliana nodded, thankful for the excuse to get up. 3 days on the Fury alone with Ray. This is exactly why she wanted her to stay on the Falcon. Whew. Okay, I want to do this because I want to see what people say about this fic. Because this was probably the best chapter so far. And that for those of you who haven't been here the whole time, that's an extraordinarily low bar.
yep. I mean, we're only 3 chapters in.
But I think it's cuz primarily this chapter is literally just leaning on the movie. Like
Yep.
most of the plot that happens in this chapter is movie plot. It's already done. It's already written. We can just copy paste dialogue, add some descriptions of the events, and move on.
Yep.
The dialogue here is cringe at its worst. Sometimes it's decent, but never exceeds beyond that. None of the characters really have their own unique voice, do they? Like there's no quirks, there's no unique sort of there's no uniqueness to anyone's dialogue, which is actually quite the issue because it makes all the dialogue very, very flat. Like Ray probably has the clearest voice, but it's primarily just her being ignorant, which isn't a very good look. So I'm genuinely curious what people say about this fic. All right. Okay, full stop. The whole fight with the Falcon and TIE fighters on Jakku is one of the coolest parts of episode 7, along with Green being a great moment for Rey. I'm very glad to see that part of the story was mostly preserved, as is, with a few neat inclusions on top. No, they were garbage inclusions. Don't fool yourself. Also, Han playing off someone like Aliana is not something I thought I wanted until I got it. Here's hoping they have some more fun moments before his unfortunate end. I miss the Han Ray ship bonding time, but honestly, Aliana Ray alone on the Fury is so much better.
No. Right, really? Haunted Ray? That's just fucking creepy.
A father-daughter relationship? Dude, why would you ever think that? Okay, I
Okay,
might have
I might
misread.
have missed. Oh, sorry. I thought we are gonna go like back and forth. All right, scroll up, scroll up. Dude, scroll back. I wanted to read the rest of it. Okay, so as a father-daughter relationship, dude, why would you even think that? Okay, I might have misread. I thought you meant ship. You shipped Han and Ray. Fucking dumbass. God
Yeah.
no. They meant bonding on the ship, not ship bonding. Well,
One
no.
or
Uh, yeah, when I hear ship bonding, yeah, the first thing I think is them bonding on the ship. See, well,
one or possibly multiple upcoming chapters of gay Sith and Jedi bonding time. Sweet.
no.
Oh god. I can't wait for this entire section to be the cheapest of like romance novels.
So, so I'm curious, Clayton. So, from your experience with when it comes to most people who, I guess, praise, who like fantasize or glorify the concept of homosexuality, how many of them are actually gay or bisexual?
No clue. But it doesn't matter. So, one of the keys in getting someone to invest in a romantic plot, and this pretty much goes just about for just about any medium, is you have to genuinely put so much more work into the characters than you would in any other medium. Because let's think about it. John Wick does not have the same need for character development as, say, Ryan Reynolds in The Proposal. Like, we need John Wick's motivation, and then he goes off and proceeds to kick ass. And like he might have sex with the romantic interest of the movie. But to build a romantic plot, you have to put a lot of work into your characters. They have to be people. They have to be multifaceted because otherwise, no one's going to care. I don't think Lily or her partner have the level of talent required to write this in such a way that I would invest my time and energy just independent of reading it on this and embarrass and basically dragging Lily Orchard's name through the mud. And basically explaining why this is terrible writing. Outside of this, for me to invest my time and effort into it, I just don't see it. I don't see that level of talent or level of writing capability. My memory is right. He didn't get along well with C-3PO. Okay, yeah. Hopefully, XD, these 3 days are going to be fun. I really like the Falcon Fury dogfight, a lot of good detail attached to it. It's basically just word for word what happens in the movie. Centerpiece of the chapter primarily is complaint of some stuff more directly out of the movie, feels not quite divergent enough, more like Ileana is just there. Okay, so apparently she's like, first part only has minor divergences, as it builds off things that were already in motion before Ileana got involved. The description says is it's a cascade, so changes become more significant the further in we go. I love the action in this chapter.
Yeah, I like the action in TFA too.
I don't know what that is. is like
Aliana being a gay mess is the best thing. Why?
yeah,
I guess as in like doesn't have. I guess just I guess what he means by mess, like he just doesn't have. She doesn't have good experience with women. I guess.
I I, I suppose.
I hope you're not
Yeah,
just
I think it's supposed to
projecting
be like
projecting your own mental instability.
no. So being a gay mess is a thing in a lot of fics where the sort of like uber confident, like good looking part like character is when it comes to someone they like just like the clumsiest thing in the world. Like she's literally to the point of incompetence. So think Moe girl, but actually no. Tsundere is probably pretty close to that to what it is. Like her Tsundere is probably pretty damn close to what this fic trope is. Just completely just levels of incompetent that you really wouldn't see in people that are projected to be this badass or supposedly this badass and this tends to pop up in fics that are average to below average. Usually if the character writing's good enough, the whole if the character writing's good enough, the whole gay mess thing is unnecessary because you understand like, oh, this character is going through is like X, Y, and Z has reasons X, Y, and Z to sort of be this way around this person. In fics where it is commonly used, it's more likely just it's a crutch to have like cutesy scenes. It's a crutch the writer leans on to have cutesy moments and tension happen. All right. Aliana explaining to Finn that family can be anyone, anything. Aliana and Han's interaction. That you skip the pointless scuffle. Two sentence has repeating words. Okay, so this is all. I would probably be willing to bet Lily's deleted
Hold on, hold on.
comments. What?
Oh, sorry, never mind. I was looking at the YouTube version, so I'm a few
Oh,
seconds behind you. Apparently, Lily openly admits that she wants Kylo to get beaten up and humiliated.
no, she says that's what's going to happen in the fic.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, okay, that is not good writing.
No, it's not.
If you have a bad character, okay, if you're handed someone else's IP, and there's a character you don't like, don't go out of your way to make the character look bad just because you personally hate them. If anything, try to make them a better character. Like I don't like Jar Jar. I think he's annoying. But if I was writing a Star Wars story that had him in it, I would try to go out of my way to make Jar Jar a better character.
Yeah. Like what the like
Yeah, some people do this a lot. So like in so I think there's like an official Transformers comic. So for those of you who don't know, in the original Generation 1 cartoon series, it eventually, after its second season, ended up getting a new movie, a theatrical movie that was made to promote brand new characters. So in that story, Optimus Prime ends up dying, and the protagonist Hot Rod is partially to blame for it. So since then, a lot of Transformers fans have a raging hate boner for Hot Rod. So some there is a like a comic that's like a retelling of that story. But I think it's like told like what if Optimus didn't die. But then the writer of that comic just went out of his way to make Hot Rod look like an absolute retard.
Like, yeah, there's a lot of problems with Lily Orchid with the writing in this fic, and all of them stem from the way, like, the lack of editing and the fact that she's literally just leaning on the movie for half of it.
Hmm.
Like, there's a reason this is the best chapter so far, and it's because it basically has the movie to basically crutch these characters that are these planks of wood up and over for it to land where it needs to.
Yeah, you're actually yeah. She's unintentionally making The Force Awakens feel like a better movie.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like how Batman v Superman kind of retroactively makes Man of Steel a better movie because at least it didn't go that balls to the walls insane.
hmm And there's also the whole like, oh, oh, like there's edits very clearly of what she thought needed to be taken out of the movie and what needed to be there. And I would say those are good. But the problem is they sort of fall by the wayside when uh you lean so heavily on it prime first part of the episode, first part of the fic, and then you're just like, nah, I don't need it anymore. Bye. My characters can carry this, and while and at the very least, I can say Lily Orchard is probably a fan of Han Solo, or at least knows the character fairly well because his dialogue is very on point. So, like I said, this is not the worst chapter in this fic. I would probably say chapter 2 is the worst. It drags forever and is bad, but we will see. I might, who knows? We're only 3 chapters in. There's like 50 chapters in this fic. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
all right. Well, thank you all for joining us. So happy you could spend your Sunday afternoon with us. We'll be back next week, same time. We're not sure what we'll be doing. We might either be talking about Kenobi or we might be doing this again.
Or maybe something entirely different, depending on what comes up this week.
Very true. And until that time, thank you all so much for watching. And y'all have a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah, take care.